Want to hear about the time that I couldn't understand a word? This is one of the most defining stories from my childhood. You may see me smiling now, but back then, it wasn't so funny. Picture this. When I was 8 years old, my mom and I made a life-changing move from Belgium to Italy. Before leaving our country, one of the most vivid memories is of our enormous dining table, completely covered with almost all of my toys, being sold off to a buyer. The shock of that moment was huge. Before leaving, my mom hired a private teacher to give me a couple of Italian lessons at home. But the problem is that I didn't take them seriously because I was still thinking about where all my toys had gone. So I ended up learning only some basic tourist phrases, nothing more. I had just finished my 3 years of elementary school in Belgium, where my language was Flemish. So when we arrived in Italy, it was nearly September, and the new school year was about to start. The Italian school supervisors were completely clueless about what to do with me. They considered everything, from making me repeat the 3rd grade for a whole year to having me hop between the first 3 grades, like time traveler. In the end, they decided to toss me straight in the 4th grade and just see what would happen. I still remember with clarity my first day of school in my new country. My mom walked me to the classroom door, and there were a lot of kids running around in their white smocks. Some stopped right in front of me, asking me questions completely incomprehensible to me. So all I could manage was "Scusa, non parlo italiano." And it was so frustrating and overwhelming. Now, think about the first words you usually learn when you are in a new country. I let you guess them. I give you 3 seconds. So, naturally the bad words. And I was there repeating them out loud without having a clue what they meant. How embarrassing that was. But the hardest part? Making friends. Without knowing the language, the other kids stopped interacting with me, leaving me isolated. I remember wanting so much to join an afternoon gym class. But then a classmate bluntly told me, "We don't want foreigners in our class. You're not allowed to come." And I know it was a stupid sentence of a small kid, but I felt so lost. My mom could never understand why I was so excited at first to joining this program, and then suddenly I lost complete interest. But imagine explaining to her that my dreams of becoming a mini athlete were crushed by a small kid with a twisted sense of nationalism. For the first 2 years, subjects like history or science or whatever I had to study were a complete nightmare. I memorized the textbook pages like poems, without really understanding a word of what I was saying, of course. It wasn't until middle school that I learned to study properly and make my own version of my lessons. As children, our brains are like sponges, absorbing words, and then one day everything starts to make sense, feel clear, and natural, and it's like, boom, finally all the dots get connected. Yeah. During my school years, every time a new classmate arrived from another city or from another land, I always made an effort to socialize with them and help them feel less lost. Even without a language barrier, starting in a new place is always tough. Making new friends, new routines, it's a lot to handle. Interestingly, it was always easier for me to socialize with boys instead of girls. I don't know if it was because I liked to play with toy cars or maybe because the girls in my class were really boring. Really boring. Honestly, I don't know. After 2 years, middle school brought me a new start. Mixed classes, new faces, and making friends became easier. By the last year of middle school, I knew Italian grammar much better than most of my Italian classmates. That was a huge satisfaction. I nailed it. So that's how I went from a confused child to a fluent speaker. I'm wondering, did you ever have a tough moment in your childhood? Or did something else pop up into your mind after watching this video? Let me know in the comments. Moving to a new country can be a huge shock. In fact, about 50 years later, my mother and stepdad decided to make another life-changing move, this time to Spain. So they asked me if I wanted to join them. I remember answering, "No way, starting over again, losing all my friends? No, I want to stay right here." That moment made me realize just how much that shock had stuck with me. I was 23 years old, finally enjoying a normal life, and the idea of starting over was about as appealing as listening to nails on a chalkboard. But even so, another 20 years later, as a full-fledged adult, just because I probably love struggle, I joyfully decided to tackle an even crazier language barrier, this time to a country where the language barrier was, still is, and will always be so insane it felt like I was trying to decode alien messages. But this is a story for another day. So my conclusion after all this self-reflection is to embrace discomfort, push through barriers, and you might just surprise yourself with what you can achieve. And hey, at least you will never get bored.